When it comes to your sexual health, take it from someone who's been there before. Take it from me. Today, Rebecca talks to Stephanie about living with herpes.
In the beginning of 2020, probably around February, I noticed a small lesion, small nick in my vagina. I didn't think too much of it, but it wasn't healing like I thought it should. So I got this bad feeling that it might be herpes. And I went to my doctor, who immediately was like, no, that's not herpes, but let's just do some blood work, just to make sure. So we did the IgG blood work. It came back positive for HSV2, genital herpes. I was mortified. I felt like a leper. I felt like I'd let my body down, that it was my responsibility to take care of it, and I didn't do my job. I knew my sex life was going to be totally different, but I had joined some support groups, as you know, because you run one of them. 2 things I did to help me cope with the idea of having herpes was I listened to podcasts, and then I followed you on Facebook.
It's definitely crazy, like looking back and just thinking of how devastated I truly was. Because as you know, I was diagnosed in 2017, coming up now on 4 years, which it's crazy to think about. And same thing when I woke up with what I thought was a spider bite and on my butt cheek, and went to the doctor, and she was like, I think that's herpes. And she decided to do the swab. I waited a couple days, and then the test came back, obviously that it was positive. And then I found out actually that I had both types, but I've never had an outbreak for type 1 in my entire life.
Right.
Did you struggle with, do you feel like the who, what, when, where, why? Like who gave me this? Why did this happen to me? All of the things.
My sex life, I am actually in a platonic co-parenting marriage. My co-parent is transgender. He came out about 8 years ago. And so we stayed legally married, and we're raising our children together. We have separate sex lives, so what I do is I actively look for friends with benefits on dating websites, and I'm very active. I usually have several friends with benefits at once, so I can see them each once a month, So I thought that was over. And I was like, how am I gonna satisfy that part of my life? But I joined a herpes positive dating website. I also disclose on my dating website profiles that I have herpes. In my real life, I don't tell anybody. I'm still in that point, I'm still there. I can't wait until I can get out of that. My co-parent knows, my best friend knows, my doctor knows. That is it. And I think the main reason why I don't tell other people is because I still feel contaminated. I still feel kind of unclean. I'm afraid that people will not want me to use their toilets. If I ever saw anybody, saying something like that or going after me, cleaning up, that would just kill me.
That was always a fear of mine too, since mine's in my butt cheek. I was always like, oh my God, they're not gonna want me to sit on their toilet because then and I've had people say that because I'm public about it on TikTok and things like that. And people have said like, this is why you don't sit on public toilets. And really, that's not where you can get it.
Right, exactly, you can't get it from a toilet.
You cannot. People are so scared to just be who they are and to own this part of themselves because they're like, well, if my parents find out, they're gonna not be happy. If this person finds out, I'm like, well, what does herpes mean to you? Like, what does it mean for you to have it, but not what does it mean for society to have it? Because who cares what society says about you having herpes?
When I disclosed to my best friend, I've known this girl for 31 years. And when I told her I had herpes, she said, so do I.
Wow.
And I said, why didn't you tell me? She was ashamed too.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing.
That's something I always think about when I hear somebody make a herpes joke. I'm like, imagine the people next to you who most likely have herpes, and now you're saying this joke that's offending your best friend.
And I'm all about what was my part in it, and my part was I didn't educate myself about herpes. I didn't know that you could get herpes even if you wore a condom. I thought, end all be all, you wear the condoms, you're good.
See, I thought, oh, the person will just tell me that they've been tested. Did I ever ask? I never was asking these questions about sexual health before I got diagnosed. And now it's like, hey, if you're not willing to talk about sexual health, like, you're not willing to be with me. Before I tell them, I'm like, okay, well, I have to tell them this, and then I can fully be myself. Like, I'm fully myself, but then I get to literally, I'm just like, look, okay, nothing else matters now.
I find that the more casual you are about disclosing, the more casual they are about reacting.
Yeah.
You know, I hear a lot of, well, I trust you. You know, if you're telling me this, then I trust that you're going to keep me safe.
That's exactly what my ex said. He was like, wow, I've never had such a deep level of trust for somebody right off the bat. Like, if you're willing to be open about something so vulnerable like this, that's the one thing that I think it's opened up for me, is my vulnerability, is allowed me to now have deeper, meaningful connections with my partners, and not just this surface level shit. We're so quick to like be vulnerable and take our clothes off, but when it comes to our words, we don't really want to be vulnerable. And I also always suggest to people, make it a we conversation. It's never a, hey, I have herpes. It's a, hey, when was the last time you were tested? And making it like a we thing rather than like, this is what's wrong with me. Because we all have something that either we're ashamed of or that we're carrying around. And then if they're not okay with it, guess what? Bye. Thank you. Thank you for redirecting me into somebody else who's gonna accept every single part of me. Do you think that the stigma in society around herpes is going to be around forever? Or do you think that eventually more and more people are gonna be like, oh, it's just freaking herpes?
I think that it's going to be around if we don't talk about it. And here I'm saying this, not telling anybody in my real life, but I'm gonna get there.
Yes, you are.
If we talk about it, put a face to it, and they can be like, oh wait, well, my sister has it, or my best friend, you know, and they're not lepers, they're just like me. And why is it that herpes 1 or oral herpes is not as stigmatized as genital herpes? You can see this.
That's another stigma.
If I have an outbreak on my vulva, nobody can see it. But if I'm walking around with a cold sore, you know, or an outbreak on my face, everybody looks and, oh, there's my advertisement for herpes. So why is this more stigmatized?
Well, because sex in our culture is more stigmatized.
True. Very true.
I feel as though it's not society's job to end the stigma. In my eyes, it's each individual's job to realize that this doesn't have to define you, and we're allowing other people to dictate the way that we view ourselves because of a diagnosis.
For more trusted sources on the topics that matter to you, go to getmegiddy.com.